Well, I'm happy to get started. Very intimate group. And I've really been looking forward to this. So for the past couple of years, I've learned a lot about how church finances work. I've asked a lot of questions. I'm a curious person. I love learning and I love sharing what I've learned. As I stand before you, I realize, in 1907, some people got together and said, let's build a church, and they pooled their money, and they bought the building, and paid for the land, and here we are, after 100-something years, and so I'm very humbled by that. So people like Dave and me and Robin, as we think about how to spend money, and as you think about how to give money, we are standing on the shoulders of a lot of wonderful people over the years. And I hope that in the future, people will acknowledge they're standing on our shoulders. So there's just this feeling of legacy and stewardship as we go from past to future. So that's what I'm here to have a conversation with you about. So my first question is, when you think of church finances, what comes to mind? Or what are the questions you come and bring to a session like today?
Pledges.
Pledges. A lot of people say, how are we doing? Should we be worried? Are we dwindling away into nothingness? Can we still keep going? That's a big question people ask. A lot of people ask, how do we decide what we spend money on? A lot of people want to know, do we have enough? Some people say, should we start dipping into our reserves? We have $1 million. That's a lot of money. How can we use that? So we're going to start a conversation today about exactly those topics. But I'm curious what you're curious about as I refine some of these remarks. Just a brief word on why it matters, why church finances matter. We want to sustain healthy and vibrant worship. We want to be here 100 years from now. We want to care for our buildings. We want to figure out what we can afford to fix, what we might have to have a capital campaign to fix. We want to be able to pay the people who work for us in a way that's sustainable and fair. We also want transparency and trust with the people who give to this church. Where are my dollars going? How can I be assured that they're being spent wisely? And of course, we want to plan confidently for the future. Okay, 3 things that I have found very useful in understanding church finances. Okay, so we're going to get these concepts down, and then we'll have a framework for this conversation. First thing we think about is the operating budget. That is the amount of money that we decide we need to pay our people, turn on the lights, turn on the heat.
I guess we didn't.
Fix things. So that operating budget determines how much we have to spend in a given year, just keep the place going and to fund our mission and to fund our purpose in the world. So part of that pillar is pledges and contributions. Oh, that's Mary Catherine. Pledges and contributions, use fees, people who use our building, and then any interest that is derived from our investments in reserves. Okay, that's construct number 1. Construct number 2, dedicated accounts. When someone gives to the community fridge, or to deacons, or to sensibility, or to special offerings, those don't go into our operating budget. They go into buckets of money that are designated or dedicated to that specific purpose. That bucket doesn't matter if it's this year or next year. Money comes in, is tracked, and money goes out for that purpose, for that dedicated purpose. Okay? So when we think about, as givers, we think about what are we giving to? Our annual giving supports the operating budget, and then
I think they want you even closer to the mic.
Okay. And people also give to these dedicated accounts. So together,
you could define those as the support of this church and the purpose and mission of this church. Third bucket, we have something we call reserves and endowments. You're going to turn me up?
I'm trying. I just heard you very quiet.
I'm trying to speak loud. So sometimes hey, soon people were working on the sound. In addition to donations and special offerings, some people will give a bequest or an endowment or a special gift above and beyond. And we will decide to put that not into the operating budget. We may, I'll get to that later, but that usually goes into what we call our reserves, which are invested for the future. Okay? We have policies that define what we do with those larger gifts. Okay. So sorry for all of the logistics around sound, but are there any questions about these three fundamental ideas?
Mary Catherine's saying it's much better.
Oh, good. Good, thank you. Yes.
Just kind of like it would be real convenient for me to have like Venmo payment.
A which?
Venmo, like Venmo funds to get an account. And then as far as the operating budget and the dedicated accounts, so basically it's annual giving and monies to the church go into that. And then you have a committee that goes over those funds and keeping the accounting straight. And then you have a different group managing the deferred accounts. And for now, if I just write a check and put it as a Christmas gift, for someone to give funds for the community fridge, what I want to do, but I can't figure it out, sort of. And I don't have time to get over and ask. So I'm asking now, that's all.
So if you give to...
You have to mute him.
Mute.
And then you talk all behind it.
Okay. If you give to, like, Christmas Joy, that is tracked in an account in our accounting system, and the Christmas Joy bucket, which is a dedicated account, just went up by $100. Okay? Everybody does that. We have a Christmas Joy offering. It totals $800. We write a check to the presbytery because they're the people
Your speaker off here, so you don't hear me.
because that dedicated account is something that is given to the Presbyterian Church, and they decide how those funds are collected.
Okay, so it might be food banks at other locations.
Yes. In fact, you can go to PCUSA. You can Google, how is the Christmas Joy offering spent? And you will see in great detail how the Christmas Joy offering, why the church created it, why local churches participated, and how it's spent.
Okay.
Now, let's do an example that's nearer to home. Deacons. You write a $100 check to the deacons. That goes into the dedicated account called the Deacons Fund.
Okay.
It's an interesting example because the deacons have their own checking account. But we take it, it's written to the First Presbyterian Church, you get a charitable donation for your $100 check to deacons, and then we give it to the deacons and they decide, I'm going to give a Safeway grocery card to somebody who comes to the office and asks for it.
Okay.
Or, they have their whole bylaws around how they determine how to allocate those funds. So you touched on an annual gift goes to the operating budget, keeps the lights on, keeps the heats on, pays Scott, pays Amber, pays Laura, many other things. Part of it goes to our mission giving, part of it goes to Church and Society for designating which local charities we want to support with those community dollars. And then these other special things that have names, like Deacon, Sensibility, Special Offering, Memorial, those go into dedicated accounts and are used for those specific purposes.
Thank you, that was extremely useful.
Okay. Let me go back to my... Anything else? Any other questions? Okay.
Martha, just a comment, and that is that I have been very grateful for the fact that it is so easy and fast to go to the church website, check on donations, check on Give Online, and I can say, you know, this is for the deacons, this is for the community fridge. It takes just seconds, doesn't involve writing any checks.
I know, it's amazing.
And I do keep track of it myself, but I don't technically need to, because that turns up when I get
That's right.
my giving statement.
That's right.
And I can check that so that my records and yours are the same.
Yeah.
I think this has been a real stride forward. I write very few checks anymore.
Great, yay. You asked about Venmo and PayPal. We do have those buttons, but that's a much larger sort of, it's just one more banking stream coming in. It adds costs, you know, there's fees and complexity, but we can talk about that. You had a question, Julie.
So, if you decided you want to have lovely new curtains in here, and you're going to take that on, and you put a check in the offering plate that says, "For new curtains."
Oh, I want you to hold that question, because I am teeing up, we're having a little workshop around that very question.
It's the shield, she can leave now.
Okay. Eye chart, I know, but I just wanted to at least, and if you want this presentation, I'll email it to you afterwards, okay? I didn't want to print a lot of paper, but I can send this to you. But this is where our money comes in, and this is how we spend it. Now, like most nonprofits, this won't be surprising. The bulk of our income for the operating budget comes from donations. The second biggest bucket comes from use fees, okay? The bulk is spent on people. That's very characteristic of churches and other nonprofits. The next biggest bulk is property and maintenance. And then after that, office and administration, okay? So your dollars that you give for your annual gift predominantly pay for people and keeping this place lit and warm, maintained, and then some other things that we have obligations around. And then our committees get money every year. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Oh, okay, I want to introduce another concept because, to Jillian's point, I want to spend something, I want to see something happen that's not in the operating budget, that we didn't budget for. So how do we go beyond the operating budget to do important things that we want to do? Like fix landing court drainage, or build a guest room, or fix the roof. So we fund special projects through these accounts that we've created for that purpose. Maybe it's the property and maintenance account, or maybe it's hey, we make a judicious decision this session to sell some of our investments to fund these special projects. That happens. We also get these special major gifts and bequests, or we do a capital campaign. So I thought this was a useful chart to show that over the last 4 years, those additional sources of income equal about 211. And how did we spend those things beyond the operating budget? Well, for a time in 2022, we had NPI come in and they acted as interim bookkeepers. And we were between Lori and the next bookkeeper, so we paid for that out of these special funding mechanisms. We spent some money on heat pumps for the preschool. And in 2023, we did some sound system upgrades, all approved by session. And they were check written from the Memorial Gift Fund, for which these things can be we can choose to spend money on these things. And then in 2024, we had a bunch of things. We had the sanctuary roof, we did heat pumps in the office. So bottom line is, I just want you to remember that we get additional monies, not tenant use fees, not annual giving, but a special gift. They go into reserves, and then we have thought processes and decision-making initiated by F&R, Finance and Resource Committee, but always approved by session. We want you to go do these special things that are not part of the operating budget. Okay, this is an example of that. And out of that cumulative, 323. So we did dip a little bit more than those special gifts allowed us to do, but we make those choices very carefully. So, any questions on this eye chart? But it's just important to know that we can do things, even if it's not in the budget.
Question about, intuitively, it would make more sense to me that the contributions that Church and Society is responsible for distributing to various missions would be under the dedicated accounts as opposed to operating budget. I'm not sure. Since it's giving as opposed to operating.
So this predates me, this decision that, my laptop fell asleep. Before my time, a decision was made that in our operating budget, there would be a number.
151.
And hopefully I didn't die, that would be tragedy. Let's go to that. That there would be a number that would represent a percentage of our annual budget, and it would go to you because in our, like Scott says today, we do more together than we could do alone. And we decided to let Church and Society administer those funds to support things that the church is deeply.
Martha, while you're doing that, you want me to take a run at that? So the dedicated accounts, it's giving where the donor is specifically giving towards that. And as I understand that this is a commitment of the church that a portion of our annual budget needs to go towards social justice work in the world. So just like a portion needs to go to personnel, a portion needs to go, but in addition to all the special giving that we let people do, we're like, it's not a full tithe, but we have a proportionate commitment to whatever we're spending on everything else. We want to make sure that a portion of that is going to the justice work.
And pretty good grasp of that.
That's a very clarifying question, yeah.
Okay.
Did I get you enough time, Martha?
That was perfect.
It's teamwork.
Not quite what I envisioned, but hey, good shakedown for the next time we do this.
The numbers on the previous chart represent what?
The numbers on this chart,
Yeah, are they dollars?
they're dollars and billions.
About
211,000. 211,000 in thousands.
it's in thousands, all right?
Okay. This is a question we get periodically. We will stand up at our annual report and we'll say, we have $1 million in reserves. And people walk away saying, that's a lot of money. Why don't we just, I've heard a lot of ideas. Why don't we just give it away to the world? What are we doing sitting on $1 million? Or why don't we just spiff up the place? Or what are we worried about? That's $1 million. So me and my friends at AI, I asked a hypothetical question. I have a CFO husband, but I'm not an accountant and I'm not a financial analyst. But you can ask AI a lot of interesting hypotheticals and they'll give you some answers. So the big concept here is you can't just use your reserves to fund these operating gaps of these major projects because you're going to start eating your seed corn, which you've heard me say. if you take money out of investments, they're no longer earning the kind of interest that can help shore up where giving is not so great in the given year, or your operating budget had some surprises. So what this chart says is, if you have an 8% return and a 5% draw, you're good. That blue line is still going up and to the right. You're still preserving resources for the future, for some future emergency or some future need. But if you get a 6% return and an 8% draw, that's not sustainable. That orange line starts going down into the bottom. Now you can play with other scenarios. You can say, well, maybe the economy tanks and we get like 0 return and yet we're still drawing 6%. Or maybe we draw 10% because in some future there's only 20 of us sitting in the pews in this big huge building. You know, there's going to be some future scenario that you just got to kind of wrap your brain around. So it's better to look carefully at the rate at which those reserves are growing and the rate at which you draw. You don't want to be in an unsustainable position where you're drawing more than those reserves are earning, and you're not supplementing those reserves with additional reserves to invest. Any questions on this? It's an important concept. $1 million is a lot. I would warrant it's enough. And let's not take our eye off the ball that maybe that we would feel better if we built up those reserves and continue to build them up. Okay, another chart. I like this chart. It might be a little busy for you, but it helps me sort of unpack how it all works, okay? So let's just go through this one at a time. You have an operating budget, you get income. I don't like to say revenue because we don't sell things. You get income. You get pledges, offerings, tenants, and you draw interest on the reserves. That goes into a checking account. From that checking account, we pay for things. The heat, the organ repair, the piano tuning, Scott's salary, pension, his sabbatical. Then we get gifts that are above and beyond the operating budget, the annual gift, the annual campaign. Major gifts, bequests, those go into reserves because our financial policies say so. So that's what our forebears put in place and we keep doing that. Now, this line is interesting. Let's say we have a surplus. We're going to have a surplus this year. Happiness. What are we going to do with this surplus? Well, we're probably going to put it back into reserves, and then session is going to decide, maybe I'll use that surplus to paint something or to repair something. And F&R will put together a proposal, and you can too. You can come to the F&R committee and say, you know what, I'd really like to use that surplus on X, Y, Z. That all gets deliberated and that all gets approved. But if there's a deficit, guess what? As you've been hearing me talk about, we dip into our reserves at some percentage to fund that gap. And the fact, there's the budget we approved in January of this year, or we've been operating on since January. That had a line item of, I don't know, 32,000. Because when you added up the budget for the income and the budget for the expenses, we didn't have enough income to cover what we planned to spend. So we just very judiciously said, well, we'll just plan on filling that gap with this draw, and if we don't need to, we won't pull those monies from investment. So that's how this line works. Surplus goes to reserves. Reserves also cover gaps in our operating fund. And then as we talked about, we have dedicated giving, sensibility, deacons, name of projects, special offerings. Those go into accounts, those are buckets, those go into savings. Those don't get intermingled with our operating funds. They might, I won't go into it. So we put those in savings, and then when we write expenses against those dedicated accounts, we do those through stops. We track those things. Okay, is that clear? Is that helpful?
Martha?
Yeah.
Back on that as a dedicated savings, we've talked about deacons and stuff, but actually the biggest account is over time, we have a maintenance reserve of over $100,000. And that is, for that purpose, it's wall off because it's a dedicated account. And that is in a money market fund. So that we could be getting, I think we're getting over 4% interest on the money that's in our savings account.
You know, I should specify that. That is absolutely true. The money you have earmarked for these projects, they can be earning interest, and you want to do that. You don't want them just sitting in cash doing that. Although our checking is, there's so many ins and outs, you want to have a certain balance in your checking. So thank you for that, Dave. I wanted to just show this chart because people do think about how are we doing from a giving perspective, which is 68%. Over 60% of our operating expenses are covered by your gifts. And people say, well, I don't see as many people in the congregation, or our membership is declining, should we be worried? Well, we should be aware. I'm not sure worried is the right word. So I track things like the budget we had every year for giving, and then what did we do actually? So 22 was a great year. 23, not so much. We started going, ding, ding, what's happening? Maybe we're not budgeting correctly, or maybe we're not perfectly aware of people's ability to give. 2024, and bells went off a little bit more, second year in a row, didn't quite make our budget. 2025, we got a little smarter for that kind of budget, had a little bit more data, a little bit more analysis. Look at what we did. We blew it out of the water. But it's still kind of in line with where we've been. And I also like to look at the number of givers. 2022, we had a lot of givers. I can't be perfectly confident of 2022 data because I wasn't the person doing the analysis, but I looked at it. But I am more in tune with these numbers starting in 2023. We had a burst of givers in 2024 because we got, in addition to our gifts toward Raise the Roof, we had 17 people who that's all they gave. These were members of the music community, people we outreach to. The only gift they gave to the church that year was for the Raise the Roof campaign. Those were 17, so that pushed us up to about 125. So just look at this chart and know that about 100 of us are supporting 60% of the church's operating budget. Any thoughts or questions about that? The other thing about this chart that I like to pay attention to, and you'll hear me talk about it when I do my quarterly talks, I like to think about pledge giving and non-pledge giving. Pledge giving, you can kind of plan on it. We also like to say a pledge is not a contract, it's a commitment. If your life changes, just call us up and let us know. But there's a little bit more visibility into pledge giving. So we appreciate and applaud people who actually tell us, I'm going to give this much every year. When people don't pledge, or maybe they think they're pledging, but they don't tell us they're pledging, we don't really count on that as much as we would a literal pledge that you gave us. And we've been working hard on this message about pledge versus pledge, and people go, oh, I'll give you a card, I don't mind. I mean, we know they might be pledging in their heart and mind, but we don't call them a pledge because they haven't told us. So the more people go, oh, that's easy, I'll give you a card, no problem. So we're seeing the pledge giving going up. Personally, I like that because I can tally that with a little bit more confidence than non-pledge. Okay, I also get asked, well, how is our church supporting the broader world? So I put this chart together, and this comes to your question, Lindsay, about the 2% or whatever the percentages you get to the operating budget.
So in our operating budget, we have set aside, our forebears did this a long time ago, there was some method that 6% of contributions support the Presbyterian Synod. I think some of that might even be a requirement, I'm not exactly sure. I'm looking at that.
Guidance. I'm sorry, what? It's guidance.
Guidance, okay. So, in your, if you give the church $100, $6 is going to be sent to the Presbyterian Synod in support of the larger churches working the world. 2% of that income goes to Lindsay's committee, Church and Society, where they have some freedom to decide which of the nonprofits and groups are vital to the work of Church and Society and important to give to. So what does that mean? About $35,000 annually goes into the world this way, through their operating budget. Dedicated giving is all of those things I've been talking about, those things that go into the world, whether it's the community fridge or sensibility or the guest room or these PCUSA special offerings like Christmas Joy, like
One day out of cigarette.
yes. So how much is that? About $40,000. So of that operating budget, these monies that I've been telling you about, the reserves, the everything, this is about what we do every year. 75,000 is more than just paying people and heating the building. It's going out into the world. Any questions on that concept? So let's have some practice. Here's a list of questions we get, and I'm going to leave it to you where we can figure out how to go about answering this question. Okay? We're just going to workshop this so we can put these concepts into action. I have a great idea for church. I think we need new curtains in the fireside room. We could do that. We could do more than one, depending on time. Boy, this place needs a lot of cleanup. I see the paint stains and the patching, and how do we get this stuff fixed? Again, like Lindsay's asked, how can we use more of our resources to fund other groups? We could tackle that. How can we make more money? Maybe the congregation isn't growing, but we can have more tenants in our rooms. How can we do that? A lot of times people say, I get the financial reports every month, but I don't know how to read them. We could tackle that. So of this list of questions I've come up with, you might have different ones. Which one would you like to workshop? Or at least start with? Should we go with Jillian's curtains?
Sure. I also have a great idea for our church that requires money, so, yeah.
The hypothetical curtains.
Yes.
But it could be painting the sanctuary, or finally, I think that green and red paint combo in the preschool has been there since 1950.
Yeah,
When it was built.
probably.
So, with that is fraught with peril. Okay, let's pay for painting, but what colors and. Okay, I have a great idea for a church that requires money. What do I do? Okay, first thing you do is you have a conversation with the committee that is probably related to. Because you might not know whether that committee, who owns a line item in the budget, might have already have earmarked that. So you go, how do I know who's the head of the committee? Well, you ask somebody who's on F&R, or you ask Scott. So you start by talking to find out, I need a bucket of money. Does somebody already own that bucket? Okay? Maybe it's building related. Let's pick the bike rack. Okay? Bike rack was just done. Nick Morris and Cheryl and people got together and said, we need a bike rack. I'm tired of, worrying. I want to ride my bike to work and I don't want to get slow. Go to Dave. I think that's how it happened. And Dave says, well, I have some money for a bike rack. I think it came out of the major maintenance fund, or it might have come out of the Yeah. So he's got a bucket of money. So the people that wanted the bike rack figured out Dave has a bucket.
and we can go get it done. And then all the planning ensued. What should the bike rack look like? And who would use the bike rack? All that happened in committee. And then the bike rack was installed, checks was written to whoever we bought it from, and life is a beautiful thing. So that is a simple example of how you can have an idea and get money for it. Yes.
Does that bucket still exist for other major maintenance items?
Yes. In fact, I don't know how observable our financial reports are. If you're on session, it's really easy. So you can look at your reports and you can see something called a major maintenance fund, which is a dedicated account which we try to top up every year. Like in a year we have a surplus, that is almost a shoe for where that surplus should go. Because we know we have an aging building and there's lots to do. So you can look, and we did a great job this year with the surplus or what we have when we raised the roof, and we're now up to about $100,000. So you would go to Dave, who is still the head of buildings and grounds, because that's logical, and you would figure out how to decide what it costs, what it should look like, who's gonna make it happen, and what do we need, and that's how we do that. I guess.
And when you do that, the biggest cost is often always the labor.
Right.
So you have to figure out, is that a job volunteers could do? Which we did with the guest room, which cost us $17,000, which would cost $240,000 if we'd had contractors do it. So and let's say painting, the preschool, we might be able to do the first 8 feet, but maybe no one wants to get up the ladders, and you hire professional painters, or maybe hire professional painters for the whole thing. So part of the figuring out the cost is how much money do we have? How much does the project cost? What percentage of it could be done by volunteers?
Another example, not to get too far astray, but we just did a project to use capital campaign funds to fix a known problem, which is drainage in Landing Court, and we seized an opportunity when the preschool was putting in their new playground, and we saw the synergies, and a lot of people worked long and hard to figure out how we would share those costs, who would do the planning, how do you make sure it really will solve the problem. But it was a very fruitful effort, and that's how it happened.
Yeah, and I think there's still money in that capital campaign.
So could I make one decision? So why do we have major maintenance reserve? And the capital campaign was going from 2018 to 2021. Why is there still money there? There was actually a list of projects in the capital campaign, one of which was Landing Courtyard, which so much stuff happened, roofs and heating, that we just didn't get there in the 3-year period of the capital campaign. So what is left on that list? The choir rooms. 8 years ago, the capital campaign started. We've done major improvements in every room. There's $6,000 in the capital campaign fund left to do stuff with the choir room. Painting trim on windows. There's a certain amount of money to paint windows, which we just haven't done. I think there's about $30,000 left in the capital campaign. But then the reason we kept them separate, they're actually in our 2018 vision. There was a list of things that money would be used for, and although delayed, we're going to get those things done.
I think what I always learn in sessions like this is you start by asking questions, because it's not like everything is in a beautiful document. And it just is the way of the world. We're not a corporation, we're not a business, there's no staffer who's going to administer the capital campaign, but Dave has a lot of knowledge. It is written down, he knows it. So just bear that in mind, that we're people, and 80% of what gets done around here gets done by volunteers. And you just have to lean in to, it's not like you're submitting a work ticket. You're getting people to see your priority and lean into it. Yeah.
So I would assume that process also works in terms of what I would loosely call personnel. Somebody in one of the AA groups was saying how cold and cobwebby the room is that they meet in.
Yes.
How does that get fixed? Well, that's cold and cobwebby are custodial,
Yes.
quote, custodial kinds of things, although it might be fixing a thermostat or some other things.
Yeah.
But is the process the same? You start looking for who's in charge of
So,
cobwebby rooms.
yeah, no, I'm really glad you brought this up. And as you do, I'm remembering, do people remember Louise Berlin? She and I had a thing about cobwebs. And we were on the Children and Youth Committee, and our children would have Sunday school up there, and we just drove us crazy. So about 2 times a year, it's just the thing we did. We brought our Miele vacuums, and we took care of the cobwebs in those rooms as a personal project. So every time I hear cobwebs, I think of Louise Berlin, and I miss her since she moved to Boise. You are raising something that is actively being worked on, because it's a real void created when the custodian, who used to come to the church office and get little tickets out of his box and go put up chairs or take down tables or fix this box, he'd do that. We don't have that person anymore. We have a maintenance person. We have beloved Dave, who has a life and sometimes goes to San Diego and sometimes goes to Europe. So Erica, John, Dave, Scott are working through all that needs to get done and who's going to do it. So you're going to have to stay tuned on the fix for this. It's called the Fix It Committee. And the other thing to keep in mind when you talk about tenants and their needs, notice one of the questions I had here was, how can we get more tenants? Yeah, well, guess what? Tenants. Has anybody had a tenant or been a landlord? They have needs. My toilet's broken, this needs fixing, I have a contract, whatever. We have one person in the office, 5 hours, 4 days a week. Amber? Three days a week?
6 hours, 3 days a week.
Yeah, so Amber's job is to, if a new tenant comes and says, I want to rent a room, she checks availability, she fills out the forms, off they go, she collects a check, she gives them to Laura. Above and beyond, we have great ambitions, like, let's take beautiful photographs of our room and have a place on our website that promotes the use of our facility, and then all come these hordes of people who want to rent it for weddings and this and that. Well, guess what? Who are they going to call? Who are they going to call and complain to? Make sure everything's in order. It's 10 o'clock at night. Who's going to close up? Who's going to clean up? Who's going to set up? So that's all a part of this larger conversation. If you can't be in the viable business beyond where we are today with AA groups and Sing with Marv and these other piano teachers who use our spaces, you can't do more without kind of breaking the manpower, the people power we have in place today to make those relationships beautiful. Yeah.
I sort of feel like arranging for there to be heat in the rooms is broken right now, and that role has to handle that too.
Well, I know Dave gets a call, John gets a call, they come over, they tweak the thermostat, they teach people how to use the remotes on the heaters, and then they screw those up, and that has to be fixed. So we have people, but if you start going beyond that, and you start creating an expectation that we're a landlord,
Right, then we have to.
you have to live in, yeah.
If we've committed a room to be available on a Saturday afternoon, we programmed the thermostat to turn on the hour before
Yeah.
and turn off 3 hours after.
Now, in a beautiful world, you might do a business plan. You might say, in fact, I started this. It's really fun. I did a capacity model. I took all of the Google calendars for our room rentals and I swizzled it with AI and got this tool and it told me where our room are empty for most of the time and how much if we build it out at X dollars an hour, what could we raise? So that's the beginnings of a business plan. If we could do more with tenants, we could create a stream of income. Is that enough to justify a tenant manager or a facilities manager? So that's how I look at this whole tenant thing, and I know Scott's the first to say, because we'll get all wild-eyed and bushy-tailed about, let's rent more rooms out to the community and really get out there and market our spaces. Well, who's going to do it?
'Cause right now, and this has been ever since I've been here, the church has not staffed anyone to be present during any of the events.
Right.
So all of our tenants, it really is a trust, hand the key over.
Mm-hmm.
They're completely responsible for everything. If it's outside of those narrow range of business hours where Amber's here, there's not anyone to call anymore. And so so it would need, I mean, it's not staffed, period, and to do more, it would need to be staffed.
Yeah, the church host role at Calvary, that's the name they gave it, it does cost money. And the way that it would be set up here, it would probably be some sort of on-call part-time thing. So it might be better served by an agency or a group or a job sharing situation than it would by an individual because of that on-call nature of it.
Right.
So Martha was talking about two things. She was talking about that for can we grow the capacity, and going back to Jillian's question, what you're talking about is exactly what this team is doing right now for the fix-it piece.
Mm-hmm.
That piece is there's a comprehensive spreadsheet now with all of the tasks that need to be done. What you heard today was us working on what is reasonable to invite volunteers to do, and then the regular things, we're deciding whether it's a staff or a contract.
Right.
Service, yeah. So that's what's in process on that. It's what John and Erica did remarkably successfully on the cleaning service. I mean, I think we worked out some kinks on that, but it's working really well. So if we want to do that, it would be the business plan with something like you described. But it's like what we're doing right now on the fix-it stuff. Yeah.
Okay, we've got 10 more minutes. I'll stay as long as anybody wants, but I'm going to honor the time. And what else would you like to talk about on this list of questions or another question? Yes.
It's a fairly small question, but on the operating budget or on the financial reports that I do look at, there are a number of, I don't know how many, but there's some like green chocolate, I think still has some money in it. So legacy accounts, what, does that money just sit there or it's dedicated to that? What would be the process to?
So if you see a legacy account, I don't think Green Chautauqua has any money, maybe $100. But, and I think Keep Hope Alive, some of these projects that we created to serve a need then, and that need is moved on. You can come to the Finance and Resources Committee and you could say, I have my eye on that bucket. I have a proposal for what to move it to. And we'll talk about it. And if need be, we'll ask session full time. But if there's similar missions, it seems pretty straightforward to make that move. So we can redesignate a designated account.
If the money was given and earmarked for that particular thing, do we have to ask the giver or make a judgment call if that giver is no longer someone we can ask?
Well, that's what makes this an interesting question.
Yeah. Because
as an organization, you first and foremost want to honor the intent of the giver.
Right.
So in my mind, as she asked the question, it depends. So if Keep Hope Alive and Palestine Justice Network, they may be similar enough that we feel confident that we're honoring the donations.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there were things that we went through with John, I won't even raise it, where we had an endowment, which is a really super restricted gift.
Mhm.
Like done 20 years ago, it was like, and those people are gone.
Yeah.
Who are they? But we want to be really, really careful that we are clear and transparent, and especially when it comes to restricted or dedicated funds. Yeah, good question. What else has been mystifying you all these years about church finances and our money? And yes.
I think we don't spend money on ads as much as we used to because they may not be effective. But I'm wondering if there is anything we're doing either monetarily or not towards being more visible.
So I'm really glad you asked that, because I am, I think, the communications chair, and I work up through connections, and there's a new group of really vibrant people there. And I was just looking, 511 is about, I don't know, $7,000.
That little sliver there?
In that little tiny sliver. Longer conversation.
Uh-huh.
But when people say, why don't we just advertise more, be in more places? You know what my answer has become over the years? Invite a friend.
Yeah.
Invite a friend.
Yeah, if you don't know someone who might be spoken to by this church, why not?
Well, we have tried. We have advertised over the years. We're in the town of San Anselmo community. Maureen brought that to my attention. Why aren't we in the town of San Anselmo community booklet? Well, we are. We're a member of the Chamber of Commerce. We're out that way. We have a website that anybody could search. I'm looking for a church. You do it. Go home and do it. I'm looking for a church. We're going to be top. We're going to be high up there. We've invested in Yelp, getting a cadre of people to boost us on Yelp. We've done it on Instagram. We've done Facebook. And it's a lot of work. It doesn't really bring a lot of people because the people who are searching for a church find us. So I don't know the magic answer. I do know we advertise Christmas Eve and Easter. So we spend $900 in the IJ. But we used to be in a IJ when people got the paper newspaper. There was a calendar every week that we were in that we spent like $1,200 a year doing, and we just go, is that worth it? Are people coming? Hard to know. There's no metric ROI on advertising. There would be if we were to pester people with how did you hear about us, right? Or have them fill out forms and cards. We don't do that. So hold that thought and have a conversation with Connections, because they are membership and outreach. They're about getting newcomers invited and established into the life of this community, and they're about creating those opportunities to connect and link. And they're full of ideas right now, so strike while the iron's hot. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Another thing I've done is, if people express any interest at all, or if I just forward the weekly newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually reached a few people that have.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, that's a good resource.
It is, it's all to me what's going on here.
I feel like social media is something we could try to put effort back into, but it probably is something we can start with volunteers.
You were so good at it. There was a while you were like doing it.
It was beautiful, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is something that I would be willing to teach someone,
Yeah.
but not do by myself in here.
And you know what's also interesting is we did a lot of really cool things pre-COVID Like, remember we had the A-frame out on the sidewalk for the early bird coffee, and we got Nick Morris's son John to make the coffee, and we figured out how to do that, and it was really cool. Well, why won't we do that again? Why? Because someone has to really champion it and make it happen. Yeah.
When we did the moving forward, whatever it was called, one of the things that I learned from that was if you are doing things the way you've always done them and you're trying to figure out how to keep doing them, looking at would the way we used to do it still work? Or is there someone else doing it a better way now that we should look at? And I think that's true of the early bird coffee, for instance. It was an idea whose time was then and is its time now. Would it draw in any of the people who are walking by, or would they just take a cup of coffee and keep walking?
Well, I remember being at that early bird, and people were coming with their dogs and having a cup of coffee with us.
I brought this back up because growing our membership to help with this 60% thing, that's a very worthy conversation.
Yep.
Growing our tenant base to make tenant income more than the 30% it is now, that would be good. If we can figure out how to be a great landlord, right, with round-the-clock attention to the kinds of needs of people using our rooms.
I noticed there was an uptick in use fees this year.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I noticed there's an uptick in use fees this year
Yeah.
over last year. Is that from increasing rents or is it from more users, more tenants?
Combination, yeah.
A little bit of it. Yeah, tennis is a gold mine for us.
She asked. There was an uptick in the
Yes.
income.
You may have already covered this, but could you go over again, investment? You know, what monies are being invested and how much return are we getting?
Yeah. I don't have pieces of paper for that. Let me find out that slide. How am I going to answer that? So we have a finance committee. That's Dave, John, me, Robin, Pat Mitchell, Erica. We get together monthly. And there's actually something I wanted to, it's in the appendix, but let me get to it. Who oversees our church finances and makes decisions? Okay, so this is a long way of answering your question. So much of this is sort of guided by the Book of Order, that session is ultimately responsible for answering the financial stewardship questions of the congregation. And so they're the ultimate fiduciary responsible people. They elect a treasurer and delegate supervision to a board of trustees. That is in the Book of Order. So that is the F&R committee. We are the board of trustees. So under that, we have a treasurer who is duly elected. But session's also responsible for setting a budget and reporting at least annually to the congregation. So that is what the PCUSA Book of Order tells us to do. You have some session is ultimately responsible. They can delegate that responsibility to a board of trustees, and you must have a treasurer. Okay, in addition to that, as part of F&R, we have two people, Robin and Patrick, who form the investment committee or the investment team. And they oversee where we invest our reserves. They are, and if you see our financial statement in the position, you will see Fidelity, Titus, you will see how that $1 million, where it exists in which funds. And then they get together and make decisions about, you know, I'm dating this, but it was maybe 10 years ago, there was a decision by session to divest from Israel. There are policies about not investing in companies that produce firearms or tobacco or all those things. And so that is the group of people that work with our advisors in these investment houses to just make sure those reserves are invested according to session's policy. So I feel like I'm beginning to answer your question, but maybe not.
I guess what I'm really wondering is what bucket of money is invested?
The bucket of money that's invested are things we have inherited along the way that were created either through major gifts, surpluses, bequests, or endowments. That creates a little pool that we don't need for our operating expenses.
Right.
We set it aside, we invest it so that it generates income we can use,
Right. And how much is that?
about $1 million.
Okay, that's what the million is.
When I say $1 million, that's what that is.
I see.
And on the balance sheet, you'll see something called reserves and investments, and that equals $1 million. And on the asset side, you'll see the accounts that $1 million is in.
Yeah. And how much is it earning?
I wish Patrick were here. We're doing great. We did great this past couple of years, as a lot of people. I'm gonna say 10, 12%. We did really well. Stay tuned for the annual report. That's where Patrick will tell you exactly how those investments did.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I have one other slide in here. Let me see if this is where
We had a hand here.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to be speaking a little bit out of turn, but I sing in an organization that used to have a concert here every year. And we would fill the church. And we used Duncan Hall for an after party. And then it got reduced because they started charging more or whatever for Duncan Hall. So we then used the patio. Basically, long story short, we got outbid by another church. And I want to get that back as best I can. And I'm not on the board of that organization yet. I'm thinking about it. Anyway, but the church that outbid us, they had slightly more room. But the concert atmosphere was not as good as ours here. But their church hosted the after party. Now, I don't know how much the organization paid for it or whatever, but there were people from the church there serving everybody. There was also a booth with about this church. And there wasn't anybody there, but there were pamphlets you could pick up. It was anybody that was interested in coming back.
I love that idea. Yeah.
So, I mean, we had 250 people here. They were standing up in the choir wall.
Yeah.
So, and they obviously were not all from this church.
Yeah.
So it's an outrage that I think we had at least once a year that I'd like to be able to somehow get back. So I mention it to you now because I don't know which committees would be involved in that and setting the prices for access and all.
Well, this committee.
It's just,
So you would have, I know you're not on the, is it the Dominican Chorale?
it's Consort Chorale.
Concert Chorale. Yeah. So just have a conversation with John or David or me or Scott, and we need to have sort of a proposal on the table. I want reduced rates for this reason, and we talk about it. Now, as far as getting a booth staffed, That's connections, right? That is, will you do that? Will that be part of your membership and outreach sort of, is that where you see your priorities to go do that? We've often talked about we need pamphlets in various church rooms, and we've had different attempts at that over the years. It's a manpower thing, but it doesn't mean that we can't figure out how to do it. So
Thank you.
you raise those issues, you get them into the ears of the people who can actually do it, and figure out how to make the time to create a booth or to create the materials for those visitors.
Because I have members of the chorus that were really ticked off that they weren't hit back here. They
Yeah.
love singing here.
I know, it's a beautiful, beautiful place. So,
Well, it's the acoustics.
I'm not sure you heard that, but he wanted to bring back the concert chorale and what it would take to do that, to use our spaces.
Thank you.
Nobody stumped the chump yet.
Maybe we don't have a chump.
I'm just thinking about the school across the road here.
Yeah,
I think they used to use our facilities for different events and
Yeah.
stuff, so it just sounds like if that happens once a year, doing something similar with
Yeah.
manning it and having a booth just about us.
so I do remember when Wade Thomas's multi-use room had a fire. And I just love this about Andy. He went over that day and he offered Duncan Hall. And that was a beginning of a beautiful relationship. But they have beautiful spaces at Wade Thomas, that multi-use hall. So I'm going back in my memory banks. There was a time where the preschool ran the after school at Wade Thomas, and there would be a lot of back and forth. But this was sort of an informal job that Andy Roush had as the youth pastor, to have a relationship with the local schools, and you go to all the sports games. When you don't have someone like that visibly present, again, it's just a question of who's going to make the time and prioritize having that dialogue with Wade Thomas. But I don't think we get a lot of requests by Wade Thomas to use our spaces.
I don't know how it happened, but there was one time where the prior pastor had an enormous amount of kids at the beginning of the school year, all sitting on our front steps, huge. And
Well, people talk about that, those
Yeah.
days of old, where we had a lot of kids.
I'm just wondering how that,
Yeah.
because they were all church shopping.
Yeah. So we can talk long and hard about demographics in Marin, declining birth rates, and I remember talking about that in one of our big committees. I've been on so many, I forget their names. Remember we read that book and we had
The next step.
the next step?
Yeah.
What's next?
Visioning thing you did right
Yeah.
before I got here.
Yeah.
Sorry, last
Yeah.
thought. I knew there was something that I thought the church could do, but I'd forgotten about what it was a few months ago. There's a large population of adult children living in homes here. So if there was something to bring them together, would be
Yes. Yeah, those are the kinds of ideas that are good sparks. It's nice to have them, but for them to land and ignite,
right.
you need a group of people who says, I'm going to do that and not this.
Yeah,
We all have only so much time.
yeah.
And
I'm thinking
Yeah.
somebody else doing it. I'm thinking like how to put that into a financial plan. What would it be?
Yeah. Well, it starts with who's going to run it, like Dave was talking about. How is it going to happen? It needs people. Anything that needs people should start with a committee. If you have an idea, chances are somebody else has that idea.
Yeah.
And that idea to come to life would live in a committee, and the committee would say, that's a brilliant idea, we're going to do that instead of this. Or that and this, and here's how we're going to make that happen. So, yes, Maureen, you're next. Sorry.
You indicated how important it is for us to gather more people willing to rent the rooms and so on. I just would like to emphasize that it's vital for us to have the rooms absolutely pristine and presentable.
Exactly, that's what I've been talking about.
I came in late, so I might have missed that. I'm sorry.
She's another cobweb person.
I'm
Yes.
a person, because I spend a lot of time here on my hands and knees.
Me too.
So I'm aware of cobwebs. But for example, I know that there are people who come into our church facility to tutor, and I'm grossly embarrassed by the state of our choir room and that whole area. And to think that people are paying perhaps to, you know, be there, use the piano and so on, it's diabolical. So I think that something needs to be done. I literally have, before these present cleaners, have been cleaning outside here in preparation for, say, concerts and so on that are coming on. I do need to say that certainly the cleaning people that are coming in now are a great improvement. That's wonderful. However, we need to be aware of when they're coming in relation to what's happening. Because, you know, we had the memorial service yesterday and so on, but I'm embarrassed for people coming in to use the restrooms and maybe there's no toilet paper. Maybe the trash cans are overflowing and so on. And I think that this church relies too much on the goodwill of a number of people, particularly Carl. If it weren't for Carl setting up, clearing up and so on, honestly, it would be dire. You know, so I think you need to build that into.
I think not to cut you off, and I don't want to, but I'm kind of looking at the clock. You are in a chorus of agreement. There's so much energy around spiffing up this church, making it clean, making it receptive, no more cobwebs. And we have a team of people looking at how to do that, and who's going to do it. And then there's going to come a time I'll be standing in front of you and say, well, our operating budget is about, I don't know, $550,000 a year. To do the manpower that is now being done by volunteers and to have professional organizations come in or a new staff person, whatever that might look like, are those 100 people I shared with you going to come up with another 60,000, 100,000 a year to make the place look great? And this is the business person in me, is it going to be worth it? Is it going to lead to an uptick of 100,000 in tenant income? All those things turn into, I just want to say I hear you, Maureen, and you are absolutely not alone. A lot of people share that energy about cobwebs, trash, scheduling, communication. It's how. The how questions are currently being worked on. Everybody, yeah.
Well, in the memorial service, we should have had 2 cleaners. Yeah, there were instructions to do a cleaning on Friday and an extra cleaning of the sanctuary after the memorial.
I wish I'd known, because I was cleaning the sanctuary.
Yeah.
Literally with the
On
sweepers.
memorials, we have a $150 fee built in to help with that on each side. So we Amber checks in with John and me to see what the, how close it is to other events. But on this one, we authorized that. So if you have a question, you can check in with April on that. Explain.
Okay.
And I agree with everything else you said. I don't want to be, I'm not disagreeing. I'm like, that's one where if it didn't happen, let us know because I'm never getting a check for it to have happened.
Okay, Phyllis, you had a question. Do you remember what it was?
Well, I just want to say I appreciate what the church is doing for people like me that are hard of hearing. But there are a lot of gaps. For instance, to have a meeting in here and not have a mic and mics that could be carried around so that everybody's voice could be heard. I can't be the only person here that's hard of hearing.
So I feel bad about that because I didn't come on Friday and I just trusted the universe to give me what I needed. I was surprised I didn't have a mic in here, but next time I'll do better. I don't come to adult eds a lot, so I don't know how they do it.
No, we don't come because I can't hear.
Yeah.
We don't come to the after church seminars that Royce does.
Yeah.
So I hope, Phyllis, I hope that you will convey that to Royce and to Cheryl, and I'll be meeting with them, and I will too. That was, because I don't think the education team has that in place yet.
And
And it's
frankly,
one of
I
the
don't
things-
think it's up to me
It's not a.
as the speaker
Yeah.
to figure out all these logistics. So I was a little disappointed too when there was a slurry and getting me set up and on Zoom, and so my apologies.
Yeah, so,
Not blaming you, I'm just making a statement that
Yes.
and it's powerful, and I'll pass it on, but I think it's powerful coming from you to the committee to hear that, because we're gonna be going over the survey that folks filled out about these, and one of the things we were checking on was for that, so I'll mention that.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna wrap, but I'll stick around. Did this meet objectives? Was this worthwhile for those of you who came to this meet your
Yes.
expectations?
Yes.
Okay, great. We can do it again. Yeah.
I just want to say how, and I brag on you to my Presbyterian colleagues, this finance and resources team, they are superstars. And they have taken us from a point right after COVID where our accountability systems were broken and have built up this robust, transparent, state-of-the-art accountability system, including this amazing presentation. So I just want to say thank you. I've watched the hard work. Yeah.
I was sharing.
Ditto.
Yeah. No, it's really, really fun. You never know when you say yes to joining a committee, what that's gonna look like. You just say yes. And then it's like, oh, I am learning Survey Keeper. Now I'm like the expert on this piece of software that we use to track donations. Or, I remember last December, I was closing the books. Me, Martha, was like on QuickBooks, closing the books with Patrick, of course. And it's like crazy what you find yourself getting into when you say yes to something. And it's been fun. Thank you. Okay, great.